Hi everyone, welcome to Get Well with Dr. Shel. I am Dr. Shalina Lalji, better known as Dr. Shel, and I know as a board-certified OBGYN and a functional medicine expert, your health is unique and deeply personal. It is a combination of genetics, lifestyle, and environment. Know this, no matter what your starting point is, you are never powerless over your health. Being on a health journey is a marathon, not a sprint. This podcast is about walking you through many different perspectives on health conditions, symptoms, and solutions that can help you get from fatigued to fabulous. My mission has always been to offer my patients and community the best of mental, physical, and spiritual wellness. You can learn more about me and my wellness center and schedule your telehealth appointment at drshel.com. We can support you no matter where you are in the world. This podcast is a powerful and simple way to carry the wisdom of thought leaders from around the world in your pocket and continue to develop your own healing journey every single day. So let the journey begin. Welcome, everybody. We have a very special treat for you today. My good friend, Dr. V, is joining us. Dr. V is the founder of Breast Cancer Conqueror, the 7 Essential System, and co-founder of My Breast Friend. Her signature process has empowered thousands of women in over 43 countries around the world. Dr. V has personally conquered breast cancer twice, which gives her an extremely powerful and empathetic perspective to understanding other women like myself facing a healing journey. Dr. V has been in the wellness industry for over 40 years. You wouldn't tell because she looks amazing. Beginning with her chiropractic degree in 1979, Dr. V has also pursued extensive studies in various fields of energy medicine. Her specialties in chiropractic, bioenergetics, Meridian Stress Analysis, Homeopathy, and Digital Thermography gives Dr. V a unique approach to health and wellness. She is Amazon #1 bestseller author, Heal Breast Cancer Naturally. I got this book very early on in my journey. She's also authored 7 Essential Steps to Beating Breast Cancer in 5 countries and in 10 different categories. And she has been featured in the world-renowned Truth About Cancer docuseries and on several world-renowned live stages and summits. And I can go on, but welcome, Dr. V. So good to have you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shel. It's so nice to see you again.
It's great to be here, and it's great to see you again. And I have to add something really personal, and that is that back in October of 2019, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, our good friend JJ introduced us, and you were just such a source of inspiration for me. And you were so kind and genuine and authentic and just took your time to be there for me, to support me, to guide me. And I will never forget that. And I want to just say a special thank you from the bottom of my heart for you and your genuine kindness of your heart.
Thank you. It was so awesome to connect with you, and you were definitely going through some challenges, so I was so happy to help you.
Well, you're kind. Thank you so much. And it shows in everything that you do for the women who are struggling with breast cancer right now. And you help them thrive, and you help them, just do so with such grace and such empathy. So I'd like to first talk about you. Tell us a little bit about your personal journey and why you're so passionate about sharing this message of hope with women all around the globe.
Well, I'm passionate about sharing hope because when we think of breast cancer, what's the first thing that comes to our mind, right? Bald head, thick, struggling to stay alive. And it doesn't need to be that way. My mission is to really help women so that they never fear breast cancer again. Right. And really my whole journey with cancer started back in 1983 when my father was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Was given no hope, and he was sent home to die. They told him he had 6 weeks to live, and he bought into it to that very day. He died after those 6 weeks.
Wow.
And, 1983, no internet back then, but I knew with my chiropractic training and my nutritional training that, something could have been done. So I went to the library, did a lot of research, called some cancer clinics, which were few and far between back then, and realized that something could have been done for my dad, but it was too late for him. So I just, took that fire in my soul and started applying those principles in my practice and saw amazing things. I mean, people were reversing autoimmune diseases and cancer and MS and all these things. Just people were getting well. And I had a very thriving, busy practice. And fast forward, 23 years later, I'm in the shower getting ready for work and did a breast exam, which I typically did. And bam, felt that lump that changed the course of my life forever, professionally and personally.
Of course.
Big shock for anybody, right, who gets that diagnosis. And I really had to ask myself, how could somebody like me develop breast cancer? Because I thought I was doing everything right.
Of course, yeah.
So I had to really go back to the drawing board and look at my life, look at my lifestyle. And there were moments in my healing journey, just like anybody else, where, you have highs and lows, ups and downs, and moments of frustration where I just thought to myself, there had to be an easier way. And that's when I just sat down and started writing everything that I was doing and put it in an organized form. And that's how the 7 Essentials came about. 7 steps for you to be able to follow. It's a guide, it's actionable steps. And if you do that, you never have to fear cancer or any dis-ease ever again.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. Wow. And that is a very inspirational story because, when you have a parent that you've lost and then you look back and I'm so sorry about your loss. Pancreatic cancer is, we all know, a very tough cancer, but applying the principles that we're talking about, we now know that the body is a magical thing, right? Mm-hmm. If treated correctly and if all the things are being done, we can at least give it the best chance possible, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you went through this particular journey twice, and both times you discovered the lump, both times, literally because of a breast self-exam. So tell us, are breast self-exams really that important? And do you think they're effective for the average woman? We know it's a rhetoric question, but please tell us more about that.
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, the majority of women do find a lump by themselves way before it's seen on a mammogram or ultrasound or thermogram. So it's very important for women to be proactive with that. You may get screened once a year, but there's still 364 days of the year where your breast tissue can change. And the biggest question or frustration that women have is, I want to do them, but I don't know what I'm feeling. My breasts are lumpy. Nobody's ever taught me. I'm scared to touch my breasts. Well, we've changed. We've taken that pain point away by creating something that we call My Breast Friend.
Love it. I love that. Wow.
So My Breast Friend is based on the Mammocare method, and the Mammocare method has instructed thousands of doctors. Maybe you were trained on it. It's a silicone breast model that has trained thousands of doctors for the last 30 years. And it's a lifelike model that has lumps in it that were very similar to lumps found in women's breasts. Mm-hmm. And so this whole system teaches you what to feel for, how to feel, and where to feel. And so now this model is available to women in general, not just to doctors and nurses. So that's something that I'm really excited about because now women have access to proper training.
That's awesome. And I really, I think that's great because we need to start this at a younger age too, right? I have a 20-year-old daughter, Zoe, and this is something we talked about years ago that, I want her to be comfortable with examining her breasts and how to do it and where to start in the axilla and going all around. Because if you know your geography yourself, you're going to know a little change, and it could be a tiny little change, but it's important to know that change, right? So what all is included in the training kit that you've created?
So the kit comes with an instructional booklet as well as a 20-minute instructional video that comes with it. So it's a whole process that teaches you specifically, and it's not something that you learn first time around, which is why you want to watch the video and practice with the model, several times. But women who have used it rave about it, and I even had a woman in Australia who said that she found a lump and she went to the doctor and the doctor couldn't find it. She had to show him where it was. So pretty, it really makes your fingers very sensitive to the changes in your breast tissue.
That's fantastic. And, that's life-saving, right? Because if we can detect breast cancer at an early stage, our treatment results and, our prognosis is so much better. And we can, if we are really in touch with ourselves and in tune with ourselves. What do you say for women who've had breast implants and it's difficult to do self-breast exams for them? How do you train them?
It's still the very same principle. You want to know what your normal geography is. Right. And as you feel a change, and we've had some women who've noticed changes in their implant. And so they were able to go get it checked and, there was leakage or there was, something wrong with the implant. So it's just becoming sensitive to change, knowing what your normal is versus what is not normal.
That's true. You've done a lot of work in the field of breast cancer for several decades now. When you see women who have had breast implants and then they're trying to they're having some issues with it or having it removed, can you sort of share your wisdom on that? What have you seen? What do you suggest to women if they've had implants or if they're considering having implants? Tell us what you've learned.
Well, two things. If you've just been diagnosed, and let's say you just had a mastectomy, don't rush into getting implants because your body needs to heal. Heal from the cancer first, and once you're 4 or 5 years out, then perhaps consider doing something like that because surgery and the expanders and everything is very, very traumatic. Sure. Secondly, we now know that implants have caused a lot of autoimmune issues. There's a term now called breast implant illness, and more women are coming forward and sharing their stories. Think of it this way. It's like getting a sliver or a piece of glass underneath your skin. Your body, it's an irritation to your body. And so right away, your immune system goes to work to try to protect you from that foreign object that's in your body. And that's why it creates a capsule around it. It's a site for bacterial and fungal infections. And so my recommendations is if you have them removed at the right time, and talk to your doctor about that. But it's, really, if you want to create optimal health, that's my personal professional belief that those implants need to go.
Yeah. And I think that, everybody, of course, is going to make their own decision, but it's really nice to have the right information, good information, scientific information that you're providing. I think it's wonderful. I want to kind of go back to your story. Tell us a little bit more about how did you feel being such a health advocate, so you and I are such firm believers in functional medicine. And so when people like us, we get diagnosed with breast cancer, the first thing we're thinking is, oh my gosh, right? I'm not supposed to get dis-ease because I know how to keep my body healthy and strong and detoxified and so on and so forth. I can share for me, and this, I know that I had not focused on my personal health and well-being for 2 years prior to my diagnosis because of my husband's ALS, as you know, the Lou Gehrig's disease that he was diagnosed with in 2017. And then while I get diagnosed in 2019, and for me, I knew, much like you say, I knew something was not right in my body. And I had to trust that intuition, and I had to really focus in on realizing, I had to admit to myself that I had not practiced what I've preached for so many decades, and I had not been sleeping well. I had not been exercising like I should. I had not been eating like I should. I was just focused on saving a life and taking care of my family and my practice and all of that. That was sort of my story. And, it was for me a blessing of sorts and a wake up call. And to me, I really feel like cancer came to teach me a lot of lessons, right? But I'd love to hear your story. Tell me, kind of looking in the rear view mirror, tell me kind of what you feel about your diagnoses.
Well, the initial journey in 2004 through 2006, I just recognized I was under a lot of stress. I was in a very unhappy marriage, running a big practice, raising 3 children, and the stress got to me. So I just had to really hunker down and remove some of that stress and take time for myself. I think the second healing journey in 2015 through 2018 was much more difficult in that at the time, well, I still am, I was known as the Breast Cancer Conqueror, right? So here I was coaching women about how to heal cancer. And here I am like, oh no, not again.
Right.
Shame, guilt, am I a fraud? Are people going to believe me? Does the system really work?
Yeah.
So I had to really pull back. I was doing a lot of one-on-one coaching with women from sun up to sundown. I had an autoimmune issue that developed. My thyroid was off. I wasn't sleeping. There was just a lot of things that I created that perfect storm for cancer to show up again. And like you, in hindsight, and throughout the whole journey, I kept asking myself, what is the gift? What is the blessing here? What am I to learn? And I always envisioned that moment when I knew I would not be actively cancering anymore, and I could share my story on stage. And I would envision myself, and I did. 3 years later, I was on stage, shared it at one of our Healing Diva retreats, and I learned so much. And I think the biggest takeaway from that second journey is self-care.
Right.
Refuse to allow myself to get stressed. If I do, I just pull away, shut the laptop off, and just stop. I just don't go there anymore like I used to. Right. And really doing more things that bring me joy and less things that bring me pain.
I love that. I'm so happy, and that's why I wanted our listeners to really hear that, because we can learn and we can have all these lessons given to us. And you and I both see our cancer journeys as blessings and teachers that really taught us what we needed to learn at that time. I needed to learn self-care and limits and boundaries, and learn that only through taking care of myself can I be what I need to be and want to be for my family and others. And you needed to learn the same thing. We both want to, impact women, men all over the world, and we want to change people's lives, and we want to give. But we have to realize sometimes it comes at a cost, and we can still do it, but we need to do it whilst taking care of ourselves. I think it's hard for people who have just been diagnosed, as it was, I'm sure, for you and me too, to see anything like cancer or another disease as a blessing, right? But truly, I think I would say to women out there that take a moment and step back and see what lessons and what blessings you can see in this, right? Is that what you share with the women that you, counsel, teach, guide?
Love that. Absolutely. When you're first diagnosed, you're like a deer in headlights, right? Yeah. And you hear all this information being thrown at you, and oftentimes, just really perhaps coerced or pushed into, starting right away. Right. But it's a time where, breast cancer is not a, it's not like a heart attack. You're not going to die tomorrow from it, right? So right. You have time to really step back, let the diagnosis sink in, really, pray, meditate, get quiet, and look at your options. All of your options. If you choose to do conventional medicine, then maybe get another opinion and look at the different options that you have. If you choose to add evidence-based natural medicine, then make sure you do your research and read the books and talk to people who've gone through it, and join a community that can support you in that. So it's very important to just breathe through the process and not get into the panic mode of I have to do everything right away.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd like to talk about some of the myths that are out there. Of course, we all have our thoughts, and as an MD, I have my thoughts. But in your opinion, do you think women's hormones cause breast cancer? If we can address that, because that's a whole big worry after the WHI study in 2002. So myth number one, for example, plant estrogens are dangerous and should be avoided. Can you comment on that?
Well, first of all, I'm a firm believer in our hormones are necessary for longevity. And I feel that conventional medicine has really vilified women's hormones and made them afraid of their hormones, that if you have an estrogen positive cancer, you need to, cut off that estrogen. And at times it may be necessary. You have to, stamp out the flames and the fire. Long term, I don't think it's the solution. You have to look at two things. You have to look at the chemical estrogens that you're exposed to that perhaps are driving that fire. Environmental pollutants, herbicides, pesticides, plastics, phthalates, things you put on your skin, things you have in your home. All those things can mimic and drive estrogen in the body. Heavy metals in your teeth, mercury is a metalloestrogen. Aluminum, nickel, all these things can stimulate and mimic estrogen. The second thing is to find out and work with a functional doctor like yourself to see if you are metabolizing or methylating your hormones properly. And if you're not, then learn how to support them with supplementation and lifestyle choices. So I think that's really the key. In the estrogen question.
Yeah. And very good points. You make some excellent points. And just like you said, in functional medicine, we like to look at what the terrain looks like, right? We like to look at, does this individual have heavy metal toxicity? So we test for that. We might test for mycotoxins, mold, because that can, of course, create a very toxic environment. We test for the metabolites, all the hormone metabolites. We test for nutritional deficiencies to see what deficiencies there might be in the body that are not promoting health, but going the other way. And if your food sensitivities, different allergies, gut testing. So we look at all that stuff because it's not really a clear cut, estrogen bad and such good. We really need to see what bad things are in the body that might be mimicking these toxins, right? So I think you make an excellent point with that. I'd like to talk about another myth that a lot of people think about is the BRCA gene, BRCA gene, is a breast cancer death sentence. Comment on that for us.
I just did a webinar before this call on genetic testing, and I looked at some aspects of the BRCA gene. And, the BRCA gene is a tumor suppressor gene. It's a good gene, right? And, 5% is hereditary where they have, a BRCA gene mutation. Mm-hmm. But the good news is that you can support that BRCA gene mutation. It doesn't mean it's a death sentence. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to have cancer. It may be, a trigger, but unless you pull that trigger, it may not be expressed. So it all comes down to lifestyle and the foods that you eat and all those things. Cutting off your breast, getting hysterectomy is not necessarily the answer to, breast cancer prevention when it comes to BRCA gene. So there's a lot of fear around that. Angelina Jolie, and I don't judge her, but I know she really created a lot of hype about the BRCA gene and prophylactic mastectomies. And food, you'd mentioned plant estrogens or phytoestrogens. I cited 3 studies in the webinar today, how whole food soy has been found to actually decrease the expression of the BRCA gene and to really improve statistically the longevity of women with BRCA genes. So, you have to think of plant estrogens as being very protective. They're going to protect those estrogen receptor sites. They're going to help get rid and move those unhealthy estrogens out of your body. So flax, whole soy. I don't recommend you drink soy milk, but that the edamame bean itself is very, very protective and healthy for you.
Wonderful. One of my other favorite products is diindolylmethane that definitely decreases the bad metabolites of estrogen and has been shown to be super preventive. So I think that, just that knowledge of what is good and what is not, and to really look at the studies, I think is fantastic. And I love that your mission is to inspire women to be proactive with their breast health and to help them really make informed decisions. Because in a lot of your podcasts and on your website and the webinar that you mentioned, you're giving a lot of scientific information and data, which I think is really crucial for women to really hear that and make informed decisions for themselves, right? So let's talk a little bit about the signature process that you've created, which I love, called the 7 Essential System. Can you give us a little overview of each of the 7 essentials?
Yes, very simple, and your viewers, I'm sure, are very familiar with all of these, but I just kind of put them in an outline so it makes it easy to remember. Yeah. Essential number 1 is let food be your medicine, and we've talked about that. You have a choice. You feed your body or feed the cancer. It's that simple. Yeah. Essential number 2 is to reduce your toxic exposure. We live in a toxic world. We can't live in a bubble, but there's so many things we can do to reduce our exposure and to detox our bodies every day. Yeah. Number 3 is balancing your energy. We are energetic beings, right? We're 1 billion physical matter. The rest is all energy. So how do we balance it? Acupuncture, chiropractic, balanced sleep, balanced hormones, exercise, all these things to keep our energy balanced. Yep. Number 4 is usually the most difficult one, is to heal the emotional wounds, right? We talked about that. Okay. Taking time to self-nurture, self-care, healing, nurturing that little girl inside of us. Yeah. Healing our relationships, right? So important.
Absolutely.
Number 5 is biological dentistry. What we have in our mouth is going to affect our health, not only chemically, but because of the acupuncture meridian system. Our teeth are connected to our breasts through the acupuncture meridian system. Absolutely. And number 6 is all the therapeutic plants and herbs that support the immune system, that can weaken and kill cancer cells. And lastly is very early detection with thermography, blood test, breast self-exams, and just really staying on top of your health.
That is just fantastic. I mean, just a great overview. I want to just kind of dive into a couple of those. Sure. So number 1, let food be thy medicine. That is something that, we have heard over and over for centuries, right? Hippocrates said this how many years ago, right? When you talk about that, let's talk about sugar and inflammatory foods a little bit so that the audience can really understand the science behind why we as functional medicine doctors say, really go with an anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory diet, and sugar can be so inflammatory. So talk about that.
Well, we know that the basic pathways that cancer cells use are sugars. And cancer cells have twice as many insulin receptor sites than our healthy cells. You get a PET scan, which lights up first, the cancer cells, right? So we know when it comes to sugar, cancer cells get fed first. So avoiding processed foods, simple carbohydrates, processed oils, anything that's toxic, that has, labels on it that are, 2 inches long, and you don't understand what it is. Mm-hmm. More than likely, you don't want to put it in your body. So we know all those types of processed foods will increase the inflammatory process, and inflammation is the foundation for all disease, really.
Absolutely. And most inflammation begins in the gut, and that's where we're putting the food and then goes everywhere else. So excellent overview on that. Reducing your toxic exposure, we touch upon a lot of this, right? Chemicals, herbicides, pesticides, etc. Let's talk about EMFs being a really big toxic exposure, right? A lot of people don't think about that. So can you comment on that a little bit? Because you and I both know Those cell phones are not doing us any favors.
Yes, yes. So I've been preaching EMFs for probably 2 decades. I'm very electrosensitive. So I wear a pendant. I have a little bit of technology by my computer. I have a key technology in my home. EMFs are probably the most insidious toxin. I mean, it affects us 24/7. We don't taste it, see it, feel it, but it affects us.
Yeah.
It affects our hormonal system, our cardiovascular system, our nerve system. And, you know, the scary thing that is coming in the future is the 5G. I mean, the planet is going to be literally blanketed with hundreds and hundreds of satellites beaming 5G down to us.
Yes.
And, you know, the studies aren't good. They're really showing that it's going to be very dangerous for the planet and for animal and plant life.
Right.
You know, I cite a very simple study that was done by students in Sweden several years ago about Wi-Fi. They took some sprouting seeds and put them in a room with Wi-Fi and put another plate in a room without Wi-Fi, away from, you know, as many EMFs as they could. Well, guess what happened to the ones who were in the room with the Wi-Fi? They didn't even continue to live. They all died.
Wow.
So if it does that to sprouting seeds, imagine what it does to our bodies, right?
Yes, on a cellular level, on such a, you know, such a cellular level. I know that it affects everything, not just cancer. It affects neurodegenerative diseases. It affects autoimmune diseases. I can tell you when Ayaz got diagnosed with ALS, you know, Wi-Fi was out. You know, everything around him, we just got all the monitors and made sure that we got rid of anything and everything that would be giving him that EMF exposure. And just a few tips. I mean, I think it's really important, and people have heard this, and some people find it difficult to do, and I know it is difficult to do. Don't charge your phone right by your bedside, right? It needs to be as far away as possible. And if you have to have it in your room, put it on airplane mode, because you really don't want that continuous EMF going into, especially while you're sleeping. Because sleeping is when we're healing. And if you have all that toxicity interrupting and disrupting the healing process, so always talk about that with my patients, because it might seem small, but it's actually really big, because the Wi-Fi really just generates all of this toxic environment.
So you can turn your Wi-Fi off at night.
Absolutely.
You know, just have it on a timer.
Yeah.
You can hardwire your laptop, your computers, instead of having it on all day long.
Absolutely. I think those are simple but very important tips, right? And then talking about biologic dentistry, I want to kind of when I was diagnosed with cancer, the first thing I did, and I know you and I both know our good friend Dr. Nunnally, I went and got my cavitations out. Same with my husband when he was diagnosed with ALS. So talk a little bit about cavitations. Most people have not even heard of the word cavitations when it comes to dentistry.
So cavitation is not a cavity, it's a cavitation. It literally means hole in the bone. So what happens when you get a tooth extracted, a lot of times the periodontal ligaments are left inside that hole and it doesn't heal properly, and eventually creates a little site of infection, and with time it can grow. And if it's sitting on a meridian, a breast meridian or bladder meridian or whatever, it's dripping toxicity into your system. And that was part of my journey. My second healing journey is, you know, I had cavitations that I had no idea. I had a 3D scan done of my mouth, and Dr. Nunnally found 4 sites of cavitations. And interestingly, of course, 2 of them sat on the left breast meridians. Like, no wonder, right?
Yep, same here. Same here. And a lot of times it's, you know, where your wisdom teeth were extracted. And a lot of people have had wisdom teeth extraction. They've had root canals. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I've been taking great care of my teeth. But I always tell my patients, and I know you do too, seek out the care of a biologic dentist so that they can really look to see if these things are going on, and let's get it taken care of, because the sooner you heal that portion, the sooner you can start healing the body. So a huge connection between cancers, neurodegenerative diseases, and cavitations, etc. And mercury. You mentioned mercury also. The other one I want to talk about is number 7, the very early detection with the cutting edge technology, specific blood tests. You and I know this, and unfortunately, most breast cancer patients don't know about these tests with companies like RGCC and Biocept looking at circulating tumor cells. For me, for example, I did my circulating tumor cells before I started doing any treatment, including surgery. And then I did it again after chemo and then after radiation and then after, everything was completed. But all the time I was doing my acupuncture and my healing modalities and my nutrition and my yoga and meditation and everything else. So tell the audience a little bit about why is it important to look at circulating tumor cells and the specificities of those tumor cells to see what nutrients they may really interact with.
So we're all individuals, right? So there's no cookie cutter methodology when it comes to chemotherapy. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors do the cookie cutter method. But with this kind of testing, like RGCC, for example, also known as the Greece test, you get your blood drawn and it goes to the country of Greece or wherever else you live in the world. They have 14 labs around the world, and they filter out the circulating tumor cells and the stem cells. And then they test 50 different natural substances and 50 different chemotherapy agents to see how your cells react and which ones are most effective against those cancer cells. So you walk away with a program that says, hey, these chemotherapy agents are most effective. These, 10 nutrients are what is really going to kill those cancer cells and boost my immune system. So it takes the guesswork out of your protocol, and you can measure the results. Like I saw my numbers going down, and now I'm averaging with the RGCC. I'm around 2, and I've been like that for a few years. So I feel very comfortable, and I monitor my inflammatory markers. That's another simple thing you can do once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. Simple inflammatory markers to see if there's inflammation. High CRP, high homocysteine can indicate perhaps there's something going on in the body.
Absolutely. And these are such vital things to know about. We're fortunate. We know about this. But I want the people out there, who are struggling with this, who are dealing with this, who want to know that they're getting the right treatments. For me, it was a huge sense of comfort and relief, because already I was struggling whether, I was going to embark on chemo and radiation and all of that. And these are tough decisions, and we can talk about that all day long, because, it really is an individualized decision, and why you make there's no right or wrong decision, right? I mean, some patients go all traditional, all holistic, or integrative, where they do a combination. I chose to go integrative and did a combination of both, but it put my mind at ease, because my particular tumor cells were most matched with the chemotherapy drugs that I was going to embark on. And I just loved that, because it was just a message telling me, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. Similarly, it showed that it is going to be treated or susceptible to heat. And so I do a lot of infrared, and then, that made me think, okay, radiation, heat, infrared. So it really, IV vitamin C was big. It's very, very important to know if your tumor cells are going to be susceptible to that. So all of these things were so amazing to have that information. And I really appreciate the fact that there are labs out there with good data, solid data, to be able to give you that sense of comfort. I know you've been using that lab for a very, very long time. And I've had great experiences with RGCC as well as Biocept. So I'm glad we're sharing all this information with our listeners. Talk to me a little bit about thermography, and educate, if you will, our listeners about thermography and why it is such an important aspect.
So thermography is a technology that reads the infrared heat coming off your body. It's not going to diagnose cancer per se, but it's going to give you an idea of physiological changes going on in the body, the breast tissue, or anywhere else in the body. It's wonderful because it's pain-free. There's no radiation. There's no compression. But like any other test, right, it's only one window. And I always encourage women, get another window to look at. So whether it's ultrasound or mammogram, make sure that you follow up with something else. Don't just rely on one screening tool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the self-breast exams, of course.
Of course, yeah.
So a combination approach, I think, is fantastic. Wow, this has just been absolutely a treat and fantastic. And I know that, the women that listen to you are so, so inspired by you. I know you have a really special gift for my community. Can you please talk about that?
Yes, I'm very proud of my book, the second edition, Heal Breast Cancer Naturally. And so you can get the first 2 chapters for free, and I'm sure the links will be there, but it's breastcancerconqueror.com/free book. And you can download the first 2 chapters and just kind of get a taste and feel for what the book is about.
That is an awesome gift. I think our viewers and listeners will absolutely love it. And we will put the link in our notes. And if the listeners want to find you, how would they find you, Dr. B?
breastcancerconqueror.com and mybreastfriend.com. And of course, we're on social media, Facebook and Instagram.
And you have a great podcast as well.
Oh, that's right. Wellness Warriors. Yes.
Love it. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today and giving us all your wisdom and inspiration. And you're just a fellow woman on the journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shel. Thanks for sharing my message of hope.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for making time for today's podcast with Get Well with Dr. Shel. I know that this conversation and education can help you to create your best life possible on every level. So definitely tune in to hear the newest expert and learn the latest protocols to support your best health journey. You can learn more about me and my wellness center at drshel.com, drshel.com, and I hope that you will make time to come visit us in the Houston area to take a deep dive on self-care. My team and I are completely devoted to helping you live a better life from this moment forward. The best days of your life are ahead of you, I promise. This podcast is a powerful and simple way to carry the wisdom of thought leaders from around the world in your pocket and continue to develop your own healing journey every single day. So let the journey begin.